Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I've had a few requests as of recent here about talking about magical technologies, particularly the famous Grimoires that this organization was really the first ones to translate into English and place together. And we're going to go over what grimoires are. We tend to overlook magical technologies, and that's what grimoires were. I mean, they're just magical technologies. A lot of people, mostly because of their poor brainwashing by the imbecilic classes of people, otherwise known as born-again monkeys, who want to live in fear and be cowards and work for all the evil people of this world. The police, the fire departments, your military, all those people that they tend to slavishly bend over to, who are basically nothing more than demons. But that's so typical of the cowardice Christian reality out that, and that goes for pretty much all the other religions as well, who are nothing more than bending over cowards of this world. So people somehow think that there's something wrong about that. And of course, there are discussions I'll get into. I don't know if I'll cover some of that now of demons and other things like using demons makes you evil or something. The bottom line is, to kind of put it in a little nutshell, the bottom line is that you generally use harmful things to do jobs that you are unpleasant. We could call these bombs and guns and everything else out there. We could call these demonic tools. Now, again, these tools can be used in a negative or positive fashion. Guns have saved a lot of people's lives. They've kept people free. They've also murdered lots of people and are used by the bad guys as well. Does that make a gun a demon? No, the demon is what is ever connected to that gun. Who's ever pulling that trigger decides the use of that particular destructive force. So is the way of magic. Now, magic was the original way of manifesting. Quite fascinating that you can actually produce something from virtually nothing. But remember, it's not really nothing. As we get into more technological stuff, like the Scalar Radionic stuff, we think of things as energetic fields, but energetic fields have a component to them which cannot be ignored. And the component to them is a spiritual energy that's connected to them. So everything in life has spirits around. And we may be surrounded all the time with spirits, good, bad, relatives, etc. We just don't see them. I mean, when you get people that are in touch with these kind of realities, they see these spirits around you. I find that very interesting, and I don't think it's something that we can ignore. So if you just push ahead with these kind of number-based realities that there is no spirits out there, well, you're missing the point. Every ancient practice, and of course these get delusional to a point, but it is a fact. Now, all of those people who love the Tibetans, they're such nice people, all talk about in their healing as a 50-50 component. There's a physical component and there's a spiritual component. You have to heal both. You have to control both. So it does seem to be that the people who are producing some of the most deadly effects, and I'm not sure if this includes healing, is doing it through particular spirits, not necessarily your traditional pneumatic numbers based in what is considered scalar and radionic. I think this is a naive way to look at this very amazing reality that we live in, that is inhabited by endless amounts of spirits. And there has been proof, as much as people want to say differently, especially if you're a dumb bunker, one of the convicted felons, or a guy who plays with cards, a guy who's a high school Latin teacher. So the whole idea is that if you want to follow those stooges, well, go for it, baby. So, and of course, society rewards the stupider of the stupid. So we have to understand of what's going on there. So all great traditions come down to a spiritual component. I'm moving more and more into this in the future as I understand that there's a spiritual component. So if you're going to use any type of energy, whatever that energy may be, no matter what it is, that there actually is a spiritual component to it. So if you have a disease, that is going to attract a spirit. And the spirit, we're not sure what creates what. So let's get down to common things that everybody thinks happened to them in the last few years. And the fact is that we all battle illnesses all of our lives. Diseases, horribly debilitating, that kill you. Now, is this just a physical entity? Well, I don't think so whatsoever. There certainly is that component of it, but did the physical reality of a particular, let's say, disease, was that energy created by a spirit, or did the spirit create the physical reality? We don't know. It's almost a chicken and egg thing, but the bottom line is that the spiritual components of things have been shown to be quite powerful, and we have massive amounts of demonstrations of people almost instantly healing people by using spirits, which again, all of this is very poorly put together, and people who research this stuff, of course, generally don't make much money from it, are chastised by the evil white-coated demons, otherwise known as scientists and docties, and all the other scum out there that are evil. So stop looking for the tail and the pitchfork and the red suit. Look for the guy in uniform. So the whole idea is that these are the real evil components out there. Now, which is created what first? Well, the point is you could also say that a scientist who is creating some devious thing, which goes back to kill people, which, by the way, in Asia goes way back to the World War II and prior to that, into the early 1900s, where the demonic society of Japan was creating all sorts of very evil things. Now, where did they get the idea to do this? It came out of their rice bowl? Maybe it was on the sushi. Oh, hey, kukego. I decided to kill millions of people with toxic thing here. I was just drinking my little beer and sake, and I think we couldn't do that. So, where did that come from? So, at the very least, the control of the evil spirit has put that into people's consciousness. I mean, to think that this world is some physical makeup of things, particularly like your scientist, your physicist, who can't really answer anything. Well, let's get a collider together, and what we'll do is smash things together, and what pops out of it will tell us the miracle way of things working. Thank you, science. Let's get back to your great cure for cancer called chemotherapy. Oh, yeah, mustard gas. Oh, where did that thought come from? I can tell you it came from Satan himself, through its emissaries, of course, a German. So the whole idea is that you can easily understand that. So we have to understand the reality that's going on out there. So to overlook this is ignorance. Now, my training started off from basically what would be considered Eastern mysticism, if you consider the East Ramayami land, where I studied Hatha Yoga and started this at 10 years old and practiced it for about 5 years, investigating all of the Ramayami stuff, which I couldn't get rid of fast enough. It just, their ultimate conclusions, you are nothing, the world is nothing, who are you to question anything? I'm an entity that's a lot smarter than you, Ramayami. So I'm not going to sit in diapers, you're not going to get all my money, and you're not going to steal my wife or girlfriend. Jog on. And we also know how much India has pretty much given to the world. Curry. I do like the curry. So the whole idea is that we have to understand all that, and we have to use, again, the synergistic reality of life. You take all the best pieces and you put it together. So, and that way you get the best thing. Kind of like pizza. Bread, cheese, a little meat, and onion. Boy, you put together a synergistic little tasty morsel. So as we add all these things together, we have to understand that. And let's be quite clear, I have no use for anybody, any place whatsoever. So there's no good, bad, or anything in terms of groups of something. There's only good or bad, basically, whatever that may be, whether it's food or drink or anything else. Is it good or is it bad? And generally, unless you've got a perverted liking because you grew up in a sewer somewhere and you ate sewage, and then say, well, I can't understand, I love the sewage. You don't like it. So the whole idea is that unless you're in that kind of bizarre reality, life has its good and bads from everyone. But let's not get too distracted, as I love to do all the time. But the whole idea is that we have to understand that this is coming from that background is important. So we started off with that fake garbage philosophy and rejected it pretty quickly through that period of time. Certainly, there is the pluses of the certainly yoga in its simplistic form, not the kind of things that really hurt your back and put you into pretzel positions, which I don't see serve any purpose. But certainly the breathing, the controlling of the body, the controlling of your energies, etc., is all part of it. But what's interesting is during that entire young period, I really didn't have a high level of consciousness, even though I was connected to the universal understanding of what is right and wrong. But basically, I still followed the common belief systems that most people follow, which is being dictated by dominant parents. So a lot of that wasn't given. It just was a more calm and collected psychoticness. So the whole idea is that's the way it goes. And I don't think we can give any credit to it. It's how you use everything. But filtering through that, which was more of a spiritual, moving into other areas of basic Western magical practices, that then started to influence me in my second phase, moving into a synergistic phase of using more what we considered soul force energy physics, which is moving into the new tech of machines to amplify what you are doing, your consciousness, because ultimately that's where everything comes from. So when we understand that, things become quite clear. So the one things, and of course I will be publishing this on my website, a page showing all my accomplishments. I did this in the past, and I think it has to be reaffirmed out there because people don't know anything about me and they don't understand that I've been doing this for 50 years, 55 years. And they are under the impression, because they are been ignorant, stupid, and they had their head stuck in the sand reading New Age garbage and metaphysical crap, that they somehow don't understand me and this organization. Now, I have a long list of firsts, including the first person to translate all the grimoires into English, which was taken mostly from the best quality grimoires we can find in non-English, which of course everything is in non-English, basically, being a relatively new language. So we took most things from the French. And of course, the story behind the French and Napoleon is he was going around the world, grabbing all sorts of texts, looking for the secrets of life. A lot of people don't understand that was one of his major goals in life. It wasn't just military conquering to bring civilization to the uncivilized, but this was all part of it. So, we translated all these, or I'd have to say the master translator, the only translator out there that deserves any kind of respect whatsoever, which plain and simple is Grandmaster Robert Blanchard, a ex-military intelligence officer that learned a whole bunch of languages and then used this with his interest in actual metaphysics and magic, and translated, wrote many articles. Quite a professional genius person that, of course, doesn't get any credit because all the Satanists and scumbuckets out there want to, of course, get rid of all the great texts that were done. So these were translated grimoires, which are in the public domain, are out there for everybody to use. And of course, the bottom line is that the translations, of course, are copyrighted by us, our translations, but, grimoires can't be translated. Matter of fact, I got a phone call from the copyright office saying, well, you sent us this book, but, you can't copyright the text. You can only copyright the translation. So we all have to understand that, because people think that they own something, which is amusing. If they grab something that's thousands of years old and then say they own it. So over 40 years ago, I put these all together. We then put them in a catalog where you could then access these, as well as accessing all the different traditions that you couldn't get in the past. Now, a lot of people have always been teaching courses, but if you wanted to learn ritual magic, you had to go to Ritual Magic Person. If you wanted to learn basic witchcraft, you had to go to there. But I put them all together so people could learn these different systems all in one place. And of course, I was the first one to do that, the first one to publish and translate all these grimoires, the first person to own a Radionic store that was open for 3 years in Palm Springs, California, and the first person to really publish active working magicians, getting them to write books and then publish what they had. This is rare because most of the stuff that is published, particularly a lot of things like grimoires, are basically translated by people that know absolutely nothing, meaning they're college professors with a very low mentality and a vast misunderstanding of the work that they're on, arrogantly thinking that this is something they probably can make money from, but they don't really understand the subject matter. The beauty of Robert Blanchard was the fact that he had a great interest and was a practicing occultist. So when he translated something, he did it in a way that people could understand it. And he filled in the understanding from the translations. And people don't understand how difficult translating is if you don't. You can't translate things word for word because this usually doesn't work well. So you have to kind of translate things of what it really means without changing it too much. This is a big error that most people can't do. And we'll show you how bad it is with translators. But I can go on and on and on. As I said, watch for my listing of the many people that I took courses from, the many things I learned from, and of course have been the leading edge of all of this for many years. The problem is that because it was an older time, it didn't start off on the internet, and people don't really go anywhere except for places that tell them lies. And of course, just remember, all you know is lies. They're taught by stooges and fools and Satanists, and you buy into every word they say. So when we get back to all of that and the long history of doing that, I publish my own books as I continue to do to this day. We have a very unique way of presenting material now using basically talismanic books and special sigils that send the information into your consciousness. Again, this is where power comes from. It's not the words in a book. Are you applying the words in the book? You have to go under a special type of consciousness initiation, which all, of course, real advanced mystery schools have done. And of course, by reading our books, this is a process that happens. And again, it isn't instantaneous. This isn't Harry Potter. You're not going to fly around the room or anything else like that. That's not how all of this works. That's, again, a fantasy, which amazingly, so many people believe in. They believe that these kind of powers and abilities are out there, and they're not, because that would change the entire world. Certain people have certain powers and abilities to manifest better than others, to deal with certain spirits, etc. And everybody has their little niche where they are able to perform well at, but generally, any kind of this really high powers of doing things and manifesting at really high levels that are Hollywood-esque is just that. Hollywood-esque. It's fake. It is not real. So, and I've watched people for over 50 years now, and I can't find anybody, and no matter how big of a mouth they have, that can really produce much of anything. It's just the way it is. And these are skills that are meant to be used by the individual to empower your life personally, and you need to learn the science of manifesting, because that's really what this is all about. The problem is that occultism, as people call magic and grimoires, wasn't about some high-level platitude of spiritual reality. It was about money, sex, and power. That's what people have always sought. And it's amazing that when you look at the grimoires and the things that the spirits and other things manifest, it's the same old story. Getting out of jail, finding treasures, bringing lust. So nothing ever changes, and it never will, because that's the kind of society we live in. So when we get into grimoires, grimoires are basically a how-to book. This is your how-to book of ancient times, and a lot of it is pulp fiction. meaning a lot is put into these things to get you to buy it. Now, they may have not have giant publishing houses, but the bottom line is books have always been copied and reproduced and sold, while at more expensive process back then. They were meant to be sold. They were there for an educational reality of it. So people bought these, and that's, of course, what all these grimoires are like. And, of course, most of this was kept in the bizarre world of the French, who have printed all these little booklets for many, many years, being this kind of very multicultural personality or country that they are. You got to remember that French used to be the international language, and that you learned French because there were so many French-speaking countries out there, because France kept its colonies and was everywhere. Now, to a certain extent, this is still true to a bit, but the point is that the French and their realities of life are so low level now that the very dominant English-speaking countries run everything because they have the biggest industries. So French really is not even a serious language to know for any reason whatsoever. But this is where everything filtered to. Napoleon went around virtually the world, or at least in some parts of the world, grabbed a whole bunch of stuff, brought it back to France and put it in his library, and had a large staff of people translating these into French. So, but nobody really did anything with this because most people translating is very difficult, very time-consuming, etc. And while a little bit of this was done, it was never done very correctly. It was done by people that had an axe to grind, which of course has never been. So anything you get from anybody out there other than you get from this organization is something that is bastardized, changed, and corrupted to a point that it is worthless. So do keep that in mind. And those that don't seek out these books from the International Guild of Occult Sciences, which was the major organization, a nonprofit that started off many, many years ago, which is now part of this organization, then you're really not getting the important information. Now, again, a grimoire is basically a how-to book. Now, to show you how bad understanding of everything is, particularly by your boobiest goopball academia, the dumbademia of the world, they have, of course, don't know, understand even basic ways of translating. Now, grimoire is a French word which a lot of people have translated into grammar. Now, if you think that the European languages are that straightforward, you don't know anything about languages. You know, absolutely nothing. So, and this is one of the problems. Grimoire really means a study book. It has nothing to do with pronunciations. And you read a grimoire, there's virtually nothing there about pronunciation. Again, to equate grimoire to grammar, and then grammar to the basic English terminology for it, is a giant error. And it shows you how dumb you are. Just not true. And we can get dumbademia to say how much they know, and you don't know nothing. Obviously never spoke a foreign language and don't understand European languages at all. First of all European languages have about 3,000 to 4,000 words. English has anywhere from 500,000 to several million, depending on how much. And they're created every day, because English has what you would consider a sigil or a glyph, meaning a word that exactly means what it means, instead of an interpretation which you get from certainly every single European language. So people don't understand that, and this is one of the problems, and this is why all these translations that you get from other people are worthless trash. So it's as simple as that. So the whole idea is that this is very typical of what's going on out there with the kind of garbage that is given to us, particularly by a whole element of evil, satanic, messed up people. And of course, let's always include dumbademia, the worst scum on the earth, which is a teacher. So we have to understand that. So it certainly isn't that. So when you have a language that doesn't have very many words that mean anything, you combine them all together to come up with basically is a word slang that you have to be involved in the process or living in a country to even understand what it means, or it's highly interpreted. Now, English has a word for everything, and the language so close to English, which probably will shock people, is Chinese. Chinese has a character or a symbol that means an exact thing, just like English is. Now, there are certain things in English which are confusing, like the word bear, meaning an animal, or naked. This should all be changed. Of course, Benjamin Franklin wanted to do this, including taking stupid words like knife, that has a K in front of it, and getting rid of that K. Now, unfortunately, that didn't happen, so we're stuck in these arcane things. I think all of this should be radically changed, and that we need to change the language and perfect English that up to the level that it should be, instead of having these confusing things in it. But still, English has a word for everything. If we don't have a word, we'll steal it from another language, and add it to English. So if we need something to better descriptive, but there certainly isn't very many words that we can take from foreign languages that mean much of anything. Of course, we hear a lot of derivations of Latin and Greek words, which of course are used in English to have certain meanings. Now, the problem with that is that the ancient meaning of something may not be what the meaning of it is today. Because, words, again, carry meaning depending on the culture, etc. So to have a word coming out saying, well, Satan only means adversary. Is that how you want to classify destructive, evil demons? They're adversaries. It sounds like a really garbage, weak word for something that is horrifically evil. So we got to be very careful of that when we start using that as well. Well, what's the root of a word? Well, nobody's using the root of the word. They're not using the Latin meaning. They're using the popular meaning, or the meaning that is now the way things are used. So this is all part of the difficult translation process that only Robert Blanchard really understood. So we need to understand that. You need to understand language and everything else that goes with it. And this is all part of the situation. So grimoire means basically something that is a book of training, a how-to book. Because every grimoire is not going to be philosophical in nature. It's going to use A, B, here's a spirit name, here's a sigil, which is a representation of a spirit, similar to something like this. And these are the type of things that you'll see. So people have to understand that of what's going on with it. Now, so that's what a grimoire is. Now, people throw that word around a lot, and I don't know, certainly that's not a book of pronunciations. You don't buy a grimoire someplace, because there's witchcraft grimoires, there's grimoires for absolutely everything. That's a term that's thrown around, and rightfully so. A grimoire is a how-to instruction book, plain and simple. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact of how to pronunciate a word. And again, taking the literal meaning from a European language has got to be the stupidest thing you could possibly do, and just shows you what an ignorant buffoon you are. Go to the back of the line and do what's good for you. Get lost. You're a boob. So the whole idea is that these are the realities of it. So you have to understand that anybody who has taken a language past their boobish teaching from their idiot fools teachers, the lowest scum on the earth, understands this. And anybody who's ever lived in any of these has to understand that. Things that are interesting. Everybody in Europe speaks like Yoda. I'm going to go to the store. No, me go to store. Me Yoda. That sound. Because all Europeans speak backwards. So think about that when you're trying to figure out why certain countries and philosophies or societies don't get along the same way. They're thinking backwards to what you're thinking. So these are all part of the problems. Again, they have descriptive words that are based on society. So we have things like To give a prime example of something translated into the English, we have things like someone's taking advantage of you. Well, in a foreign language, they would say, well, they're pulling you across the table. Now, that when used in a certain context, I guess you could understand that, but that's the way it is. There is nothing, things that are words that people may think they understand, terms that come from whatever country they come from. The bottom line is that things like schnitzel, now Wiener Schnitzel, which of course was invented by and made by a Frenchman in Vienna, people would think that this is a particular food. This is not true. A schnitzel cut is a cut of thin meat, and it doesn't have to be breaded. Usually, oftentimes it is, but it doesn't have to be. It just means a thin cut of meat. That could be anything. It's a schnitzel cut. It means that. So you can see how it's very interpreted. You think that that's something specific because you're an English speaker. It is not. It's a general term to mean like automobile. So if you said, well, do you have a car? They would, I have an automobile. Well, what does that say? Well, what is it? So what is it, a donkey cart? So the whole idea is that these are the kind of things that the primitiveness of non-English languages and why they're so inferior. Just the way it is. You want to be exact. You want to know what people are talking about without interpretations. This is all part of the problem when you get into all of these. And of course, not only do they speak backwards, they have all these other problems that go with all European languages. And this is the psychotic sexuality that everything has to be male, female, or in the German language, neutral. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Is that trans? I guess they were way ahead of the mark here because they have all three. Ooh, makes me horny. So the whole idea is that that's what you run into. This, of course, is very typical coming from where these languages come from because the actual Sanskrit had the same thing in it, where these people came from their original Iran. So the whole idea is that all of this is something we have to understand. So it creates a very confusing language. And why everything has to be la, li, lu, gu, gu, and why everything has to be male or female couldn't be more imbecilic. And it's a waste of everybody's time and has no value whatsoever. But let's keep the worthless traditions. Yeah, we got to do that because we're dummies. So the whole idea, instead of cleaning things up and making sure that everyone understands things and getting away from this just stupidity perpetrated by the little diaper-wearing group where they came from, is a complete waste of time. But it shows you the idiocy of a language. Now, the English language decided to drop all that nonsense, so they had a much more better way to communicate. And this is an entire process that I could spend hours on discussing the actual English language, which I don't think people care. But it's important when you're talking about translations, grimoires, etc. So this is the end of part 1, and we'll move into part 2 with our next video.